Well, we're here today to talk about the Evolution Standard Q. It is part of the family of DR products that Carestream offers. And this particular room is a non-motorized version of the automatic Evolution room. And as the name implies, it is not motorized. Everything is manual. And it's designed for places that don't need the high degree of automation and typically have a lower volume. As with any other DR room, it consists of the overhead tube crane and then the table and the wall stand, which we'll get into the components individually in a second, as well as the generator and TDU and the console. Okay, well, we're going to start off with the table itself. This table, the tabletop is 85 by 35 and a half inches. It's a perfectly flat surface, so it's easy to clean, and it's also avoids any catching of clothing or whatever. And the table will float 36 inches off center in the longitudinal direction, and then it'll go 6 inches in the transverse, so you've got a total of about 12 inches in that direction as well. The table is rated for 650 pounds. And so it's a big surface to work with, and of course the weight limit is high. As far as the movement up and down, the table will come down to 21.7 inches, and then come up to an operating height of 32 inches. Okay, the movement can be with the pedals that are on the table at the bottom, or with an optional hand switch that will also make these movements possible. Now, one of the unique features of this table, you can see here the bucky will move up and down the length here, almost 15 inches, 14.7. But what's very nice is that you can actually pull the bucky out and rotate the detector. It's a very simple rotation to go from portrait to landscape. And you don't have to take the detector out and put back in. It's just a very simple rotation of this bucky, and then it would come back in. The other nice advantage of being able to pull this out is if you do have a wheelchair patient, they can come in and you can do tabletop work without having to take the bucky, take the cassette out of this bucky. Now, the second piece of quote-unquote furniture, the second component that sits on the floor, is this generator. As you can see, it's quite compact, 20 by 24 by 32. It is manufactured by Quantum and can be ordered either in a 65 or an 80 kW generator size. Very easy to service, it can be moved, and as I mentioned, it is compact and sits out of the way. Okay, the third component is the wall stand, and as I mentioned early on, the Standard Q does not have a high degree of motorization. There are motors in the table, but the wall stand itself will have no motors. So the movement of this is purely manual, but it is counterbalanced, so it's very simple to move up and down and position. So the wall stand bucky will come all the way down to the ground. Oops. Come down to the ground, so your detector is only about 4 inches from the ground itself, and then it will come up relatively high so that you can do either tall patients or difficult views. Okay, so one of the nice features of this wall stand is the fact that you can have it in a fully horizontal position here at 0 degrees. It will also come down to -15 degrees for a view if you need that angle, or it will go to a fully horizontal position, which can be used either for a wheelchair patient or if you wanted to just do a hand, use it this way, you could use this as well. We find a lot of times it's easier than going to the table, but you have the versatility of doing it in this position or on the table itself. So obviously for a chest view, you would have the bucky in this position. It would be here. Now, one thing about this particular bucky is the fact that it's very narrow, so patients can get their arms around it, and it is contoured here so they can get close to the detector itself. This is a wall controller, which basically will allow you to rotate the bucky this way, and this is your up and down movement. As you can see, this is quite narrow, so it's very easy to position patients. They can get their arms around it and get closer to the detector. This shows the range of motion from -15 to 90 degrees. This will actually lock the detector in place so it cannot be rotated, but it's a very clean setup. You'll notice here there is a lot of room from the detector to the wall stand, and this is particularly important for wheelchair patients in that they're not going to be hitting their knees against the wall stand, as well as for stretcher patients that you'll have some generous room to float if you're in the horizontal position. This system is very customizable. We can either provide this wall stand with the DRX detector, which would be removable, or in a 17 by 17 detector, which is of course not removable. Just as in the table, this detector can be rotated 90 degrees from landscape to portrait. It's a very simple twist, and it would be brought back in and ready to go. Okay, so the third component is the overhead tube crane. It's fixed to a bridge, which is then affixed to rails, which will typically we can use any existing unistrut that's in a room. We don't require any special spacings or anything like that. We can just go ahead and put our rails on, and then we custom build this bridge to the room. Very smooth movement of the OTC along the axis, and you can do it in a release all fashion, or you can do it in individual directions. Okay, the OTC will also swivel 270 degrees in this plane, as well as a rotation this way. It will change the orientation of the view here. On here you've got, it's sort of a mini workstation. A lot of what you do on the console can be done here. You can look up your patient information just for verification, or if you notice that the patient is thicker or thinner than you thought they were, you can change your exposure factors. It will give you some information about your SID and the positioning of the detector as well. If, for example, it was set up to do a wall stand image, you can come here and select the table if that's what you're going to use. So the whole idea with this mini workstation is to not have to walk back and forth from the console to the overhead tube crane while your patient is on the table or in front of the wall stand. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the console, or the workstation that is really interfaced to the system. This is obviously a very important piece. This is what directs the entire room, and Carestream spends a lot of time on software and workflow, and you know, there's no point in having a super fast room if you've got a slow console. So the software itself, anyone that's used or seen Carestream software in the past will be very familiar with it. The graphical user interface, or GUI, is identical, and a lot of what goes on in the background is also the same. So when you look at your study information, it's using the same modality work list, and you know, a lot of the DICOM engines are the same, so DICOM print, DICOM store, modality perform procedure step, and of course work list are all the same, whether it's a single plate CR or whether it's a fully automatic DR room. So this should look very, very familiar to the user. When they come into their image review screen, for example, it's going to look identical to what they've already seen with software. All their tools are there, their markers, their orientation tools, everything is going to be very, very similar. What will look slightly different is the fact when they come into their study screen, they will be able to control the entire room. That is, the exposure factors, the AECs that they're using, and select detectors and all. This piece here will be a little bit different from CR, but only because this is the single workstation that controls the whole room. So you don't have separate workstations at all. You've got one screen that handles your DICOM work list, that handles your image quality, etc., etc. So again, very simple to use, and very user-friendly. All the componentry, everything, like I say, is controlled here. The calibrations, everything is very intuitive and easy to use. Now that we've talked about the components, I just want to talk about the workflow involved in doing a study with a patient. First step would be bringing the patient up on the work list, and this can be achieved either through the DICOM work list, or if you have an accession number barcode, it can be barcoded, and it would bring them straight into that particular study. Otherwise, you could pull up the patient, and having the procedure code mapping in place would give you a thumbnail of the images that you need to take for that particular study. All the techniques are preset by the customer, and so it's going to give you three techniques, one for small, medium, or large patients. And again, all the images would be here. If the patient has multiple studies, it's very easy to toggle through them, and you know, so you don't have to do them in any particular order. The system will hold the images and shoot them. As long as the image you're going to shoot is highlighted, that's the image it's going to take. So say we're going to do an abdomen, we're here, we check our technique settings, make sure our grid is there, and the detector is selected. This is all very graphical, easy to use, and if something is not right, you will get a warning prompting you to correct it.